Hi, Christie.
Hi, Jeff.
We're recording now.
The many hours of conversation you and I have had, we've had probably half of them that haven't been recorded.
You know what we should do? We should start a podcast.
You think? Let's call it The Why and the Buy.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, to The Why and the Buy. Christie Walters, how are you?
I am doing fabulous today. How are you doing?
I am very gruntled. I'm very
Not
gruntled today.
disgruntled, but gruntled. I love it.
I am not disgruntled. I am quite gruntled today. Life's good. I'm a sales guy. I have a podcast. I get to talk to great people on a weekly basis, soon to be on a much more than a weekly basis. And we'll have some stuff coming up in the very near future to explain what Christie and I are doing with this podcast. But that's for
that, ladies and gentlemen, is called a teaser.
Ooh, building suspense. But today, we don't need any more suspense. We've got Melissa Smith. Melissa Smith is a professional virtual assistant and a rather amazing one. Her company is called The PVA. And Melissa, welcome to the show. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your company?
Yeah, thanks for having me, Jeff and Christie. It's excited to be here. So I run a premier virtual assistant matchmaking company where I match clients to the right virtual assistant.
And she doesn't just set up shop and put her feet up in her pink bunny slippers on the desk. Melissa herself is actually a virtual assistant. And to prove how valuable, reliable, and flexible she can be, she hasn't been home in almost a year. Melissa is traveling around the world. She has not stopped working. She's not independently wealthy. She's not, well, she might be independently wealthy. I don't know her that well, but I can tell you that she's working really hard from every corner of the globe. And her journey has been documented in her blog over the last 10 months. It's really, really cool what she's doing. And Melissa, I'll give you some time to go ahead and just tell her, why? Well, first of all, why?
So I had some really big goals this year. I wanted to first launch a virtual summit and then my online course, which actually trains admins to become virtual assistants. And then currently I'm writing my second book. And it just thought, why work so hard and do all this and walk out my front door and just be where I am if I'm going to work this hard and do all these things and work these crazy hours? Why not do it while traveling around the world? And
I love that.
I did. And
why not?
It's been the best decision I made. And then from an outward business side, I really wanted to prove that remote working does work. And as I start to even expand my business more and get into remote work consulting, you really need to know what it's like to be in another country, send employees to another country for extended periods of time, what it's like to travel, what those things do to people when the newness wears off, really have, boots on the ground. So what better way than to travel the world and experience it firsthand?
Just do it. I love it.
Yeah.
I'm like beside myself to even think about that. It's just the idea of being somewhere new every 3 weeks, every 3 or 4 weeks, having to learn different cultures. As exciting as that sounds, it's also a little bit terrifying, which is, I think, the right place to be in the right sweet spot. But I love what you said about working remotely and proving that you could work remotely, because I know there's a lot of salespeople out there who don't show up every day and sit in a cubicle. I know there's a lot of salespeople right now listening to us in their cars as they're leaving one call and going to another call. They're leaving one meeting, going to another meeting. They're in one airport, going to another one. And one of the most difficult things to do in sales, and Christie has talked about this, is not work-life balance, but work-life integration.
Yes.
And when you feel that work has to be such an integral part of your life, it is often very difficult to let go. And so what's been really interesting watching your journey over this past year, Melissa, is like, look, if she can do this from Thailand, I think I can run to the grocery store and not worry about checking my phone. By the way, it's already 7:30. Who's calling me after hours anyway?
I am.
I came from a place where, email I was working in sales when email came to people's phones, started coming to people's phones. So all of a sudden there was this expectation that if a hospital sent me an email, maybe they were sending an email to my competitor too. So if I was the first one to respond, maybe I'd get the order and they wouldn't. And it turns into this psychosis really of I've just got to be on all the time because you'll never know. And I think that psychosis breeds itself in this insecurity. And so you see salespeople all the time. Listen, they're not just checking Twitter when they're walking around with their faces in their phones. I've seen people that don't trust the notifications on their iPhones to tell them when they have an email. They're checking text messages. They're checking for voicemails. And what happens is sometimes technology lets you down too. And your phone doesn't ring. Sometimes I've had phones that don't ring. If they have to do one thing, it's ring. And sometimes they don't. So now you don't even trust your devices. And so you're just constantly anxious and walking around because there's a number hanging over your head. There's a number hanging over your manager's head. I'll digress from there, but you're doing this and you're succeeding, and you're not only just succeeding, but you're excelling. What have you learned about your ability to work from parts unknown and still run this business that you've got?
So it's very interesting that you said work-life integration, because I've never believed in work-life balance the second I became a business owner and entrepreneur. And I think a lot of salespeople, you write your own book of business. So even if you're, quote unquote, employed by a company, your paycheck might be commission only, which might as well be an entrepreneur.
Yeah, mine always was.
Right? Yeah. So you don't have the same kind of, okay, I'm going to check out now and it doesn't matter, I'm still going to get my paycheck. So there is this, you're always on. And especially if you love what you do, it's even much harder to pull away because you don't want to. Right. It's fun. And so for me, one of the best countries that I had a really good work-life integration for the first time was Barcelona. It was the perfect place for me. And from there, I kind of incorporate that schedule into everything else. So it was really great. I'd wake up at 5, I'd go running, I would do my emails, I'd do all my personal work, my writing, my blog, my keeping up on emails, tasks, whatever. And then I got all that out. I would take a siesta in the afternoon because I was working later in the day. So like 10 o'clock local time. And then after siesta, I would do my calls because my calls actually give me energy. Like I don't want to do emails or write or, do those things at night. I don't want to be on my computer doing those things, but doing calls and consultations and speaking with people like that, I could do all the time. I could do it in my sleep. I love it. And it gave me energy. So I do that at the end of my day. And then at 10 o'clock when, everything was done, in Barcelona, dinner's just getting started and you go out and you have this really great lifestyle. So for me, I tried to incorporate some kind of version of that. That's my perfect work-life integration for me.
What I love about what you described there, Melissa, is that it's almost as if you were batching your time throughout the day and you were very aware of what your biorhythms were, right? So I think a lot of people think that sounds very woo-woo, right? But it is true. If you follow the rhythm of your energy throughout the day and you pair that with the right skill or the right activity, you will be much more effective. And I love that. I'm interested to know what your biggest challenge was in this process.
The biggest challenge is always like to give yourself permission, because there's always, this next blog, this next post. If you want to be famous, if you want to be an entrepreneur, if you want to be successful, if you want to be the next, Steve Jobs, you have to do this, this, and this, and this. Because that's what he did every day.
Right. And
that's what you have to follow. And so you kind of like know when to break the rules or give yourself permission and say, that just doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for me.
There are no rules. That's one of the beauties of being an entrepreneur is you get to make your own. But the permission part is hard to give yourself. Well, wait a second. So for the first time, I don't have a manager looking over my shoulder or a teacher or a principal or a parent or, whoever it is. And there's a lot of people of all ages listening right now. But the idea that, no, I can do it this way. I can do it any way I want because I did this to that's why I'm doing this, right? I mean, one of the people asked me what was the best part about going off and doing my own thing. And the first thing I said was creative control. All of a sudden, I didn't have to worry that someone had to, stamp and sign off on whatever I was saying, whatever I was broadcasting to my audience, whatever I was writing in an email. What's the message? Is that, scrubbed up and cleaned up by corporate communications? And, there's a reason for all that. And I'm actually a pretty good employee, right? I never had a problem. I'm not one of these people who's like, well, I can't work for anybody. I just get pissed off and punch people on my way out the door, right? No, that's not me. But like, you're right. But for all of the freedom that awaits people out there, the permission doesn't come implied. You still have to give yourself that permission. And I'll let you go with that.
Yeah. It's, I was so used to, because I consider myself a great employee. And so I always, doing things for other people and then transitioning and like, okay, I have to take care of myself first. Like there's not a doubt that I'm going to take care of my employees, but if someone's going to like not get something that they need, it's usually ourselves,
right?
So it's like this whole self-care thing. We would never feed our kids, cereal for, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But when we hire,
sometimes that's just what it takes.
We might, and you really do have to think about like, how am I going to take care of me first? It's the whole, airline thing. If we lose air cabin pressure, put on your own mask and then help other people. It's the same principle.
Yeah. Well, and what's interesting is, we talked in the very early part of this episode about that addiction to technology. And that's really what it is. It's not so much that we are in such demand as much as we are addicted to our devices. And it's not just a sales issue either, right? It's everywhere. It's teenagers. It is everywhere. And there's a lot of overlapping themes when you think about the addiction to technology, the need to always be on, and putting that as a juxtaposition to giving yourself permission to take a break and doing some regular self-care, because the more you take care of you, the more you can be out there. And
I read physical books.
Yeah.
And I actually travel.
Oh my gosh, really? Like with paper and everything?
Yeah. And people will come up to me and they're like, get those. But for me, it's one, I really do feel I retain information better. I enjoy but I enjoy not have that part of my day, not on a laptop, not on any electronic device, not on anything that requires to be charged or has batteries. Like I can take it with me wherever I go. I can stop for 5 minutes. If I'm waiting for 5 minutes, instead of being on my phone, even to read when all the other notifications are coming in.
Yep.
I have this separate, the world has stopped at that point.
So how difficult was that for you to give yourself that permission?
I think when you hit that sweet spot, then it's like, I've been missing this the whole time. Like, oh my gosh, up until that point, it's a little bit hard because it's trial and error. It's like, doing a budget. You're like, oh, that didn't work. Or, oh, I spent too much money here. I should have put more there. I should have saved here. Those kinds of things. But once you get your schedule right and you're like, this is it. This is the sweet spot. I started my day here. I'm ending my day here, no matter what happened in between. Mm-hmm. And that's like, this is the way to go. This is what to do.
Yeah. I want to take a slight detour in our discussion and ask you about the value of working with a virtual assistant and some of the do's and don'ts that you've seen over the years. I know you and I've had a couple conversation about this before. And I have learned through trial and error how to do that effectively, but I'm interested in what you see and what people tend to think of when they think of personal assistants or virtual assistants, and where they might need to reframe their thought process.
So first and foremost, when working with a virtual assistant or looking for a virtual assistant, how I do it and how I advise everyone to do it is first, what is your communication style? Like this should be really, really easy for you. If it's not easy, you won't do it. And if you find someone and they give you a list of things that you have to do now, and you have to sign into Trello or Slack or Asana or some other thing that you're like, what is this? I have to download this now. I have to create another password. Like that's the tail wagging the dog, unless that's something that you're looking for. You should be able to control that. You're paying this person. You have to have a say in what is easy for you and how this person is going to make your life easier. So that's first and foremost, whether that's you want to just pick up the phone and call someone, that's me. You want to send an email, you want to text, you like having a project management system. However that is, that's for you. The flip side of that is the person that you're working with, you should be their ideal client. Like when your name pops up on their phone or email or project management tool, they should be like, oh, what's Christie got for me today? Like, this is really great. What are we doing here? But the problem is when a lot of people hire people, they hire people based on, oh, this is who my friend used, or I found this person. And, anyone can do the work. It's true. That's not the hard part. The hard part is finding the right match for that long-term relationship, because somewhere down the road, if you're not their ideal client, they're going to drop you when their ideal client comes along. And there's never a good time to lose your assistant. The other side to that is when you find someone who you're their ideal, it's just natural that they're going to want to go above and beyond. They're going to do the extra. They're going to, take, 10 steps ahead, go 5 miles up the road and be able to see like, hey, Christie, did you think about this? Or what do you think about this plan? Or I saw this and I thought about you. Here's a great article for you. I mean, just really proactive in the working style and the way that you work together. So those are the most important things about finding that working relationship between the virtual assistant and the client.
How long do you find that it typically takes a virtual assistant and a client to really find that rhythm?
So the rhythm, depending on the client, is really dependent on the client's schedule. So if the client is always absent, it can take much longer. If they're present and they have their communication strategy down from the beginning, it should be within the first couple of weeks. So within the first 2 to 3 weeks, we should have like, this is Christie's schedule. Now I know when Christie's on. Here's how I get a hold of her. Here's what we're going to do. Here's how we're going through. So within the first 2 weeks, all the communication should be transferred over. Any kind of projects, file sharing systems, you're going to exchange passwords on a secure system, the schedule of your work, your calendar, like all that should be communicated, and you should have that down within the first 2 weeks. The next couple of weeks are a transfer of project information where it's like, okay, these are all the projects we're working on. These are long-term, these are short-term, these are immediate needs. And then start prioritizing them, getting the workflow down, start submitting things and finding out, okay, this is what Christie likes, this is what Christie doesn't like. This is what she liked to see more of. She didn't like that. Let's figure all this out. And then the last 3 to 4 weeks of this 12-week period is like, okay, here's what we're doing moving forward. Here's the expectation. Here's what we've met. And now let's go, where do we see ourselves in 3 to 6 months? Where do we see ourselves next year? And that should be the plan for it.
Right. I can tell you from experience that the right virtual assistant changes your life.
Yeah.
And so, okay, along those lines, we've got a lot of salespeople listening right now. And I promise that at least 90% of them have never thought about hiring a virtual assistant. What is something that a virtual assistant could do to help, say, a sales manager that they're not even thinking of right now that would change their life the way Christie just said?
So I think it's really simple. And I think most salespeople, I was just on a insurance summit, and, insurance is sales too. And one of the main things is appointment scheduling and calendaring, and getting all that information up. And there's tons of apps and there's tons of tools. I use a calendar schedule myself. I love it. But there's something about the salespeople and all the information that they need to know and all the different ways to keep up with people and get personal in it. So when you're thinking about, okay, I have this meeting to go to this meeting, you can have an assistant who is so much better than an app. I mean, you can definitely have a scheduling tool to get these things going, but kind of like, I have like a photographer friend. And so he would go out on these shoots and he would go to his assistant and he would get the shoot card and it would say like, this is where you're going. This is the address. Here's all the names of the people you're going to be photographing today. Here's the names of the kids and you're off to the races. And when you have an assistant, when you're in sales doing all that for you and they're managing your business, when you actually have to get like the business paperwork done and that sort of thing, your personal life, because they're all intertwined, they don't, kids, especially going into the holiday season, there's lots of things going on at school and sickness and you got to pick up the kids and, all that sort of thing. But then they can also put in these things like, hey, don't forget to ask about this. Here's what they wanted to know. Don't forget to touch on this. Let me send this information beforehand. Let me send the reminder. Let me confirm, instead of always just going out and then you get there and the client's like, oh, I'm sorry, I'm running late. I'm not going to be able to make it. Or let me reschedule at the last minute and then someone's away across town, or they could have taken another call. They canceled something else to be there. All these little things and details that can make the interaction more personal instead of just being a sales call. By the time you get there, even if they haven't had communication with you, they're like, wow, I really like your assistant. How's she doing today?
Right.
They want to keep their appointment with you, because if not, now they have to speak to your assistant who they feel like they might let down, because there's that personal communication already. So it's like this is like this soft opening, this warm welcome. And by the time they meet you, they're excited. They don't feel like it's a sales call anymore, because that person is an extension of you. And if they like her or him, they'll probably like you too.
And it's way easier to ghost an app than it is when you got a real relationship with another person when you talked on the other line. So the way I'm kind of summing it up in my head, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're a salesperson, you're a sales manager, you're an entrepreneur, you're a small business owner, and if there's something you don't really like to do, there's a virtual assistant for that.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
There you go. Insert your problem here.
Yeah. I love the challenge of like, I'm telling you, like anything you can think, like there's a virtual assistant that loves to do it. Like one man's junk is another man's treasure. One man's awful task is someone else's like dream job. And I still, like for me, I still get surprised. I'm like, oh gosh, she loves to do that. They do.
Well, and I love the fact too that the way that you described it, it's all the little extra things. And especially from a sales perspective, I can remember throughout my career always thinking, gosh, I really need to have this A to Z plan for pre-call and post-call with my clients. And then, hey, what about 3 months down the line call? And great plans and great intentions. However, actually instituting or implementing that never really came to fruition. And it wasn't until I really started to lean on my assistant that now all of a sudden those little touches, which seem minor because they're a little bit robotic sometimes, but their little touches make all the difference in cementing a relationship.
I really feel, it's always those personal touches. When I think of anything, we all want to be set apart, and it's never going to be like the big things, right?
It never is. That's exactly right.
It's all the little things. If I only talk to people on their birthday once a year, it doesn't make me any closer to them. Just because I remember their birthday. But I have a virtual assistant right now, and we've been working on client gifts for several months now. And so those will go out soon. And for me, that's just another way to send people gifts and thank them for their current business and their past business, and keep those things in order. I don't have time to do that. And but it needs to be done. Yeah. It needs to be done. And, whether you're in, real estate or sales, or, basically everyone's in sales, whether they like it or not, you have to do the little things that no one else is willing to do. And, sometimes, they say this, the simplest or the easiest things to say are the hardest things to do. And that's it. That personal attention, sending out that card, knowing when someone has something going on. I know my insurance agent when I was in California, he was so good about everything. Like he would come to the house and make sure like everything was good. And it was like a homecoming gift. And he had someone that would, keep up and follow and see what was going on. And if there's something going on in the family, like, my son had moved back to California, we got him a car and, these things. And he would be able to say, hey, did you get that insured yet? Did you? I'm like, oh, I forgot to send it to you. Like, let me send them over later on.
Yeah.
But then, we also had a mutual friend, and the guy's house caught on fire, and he was able to know that and really be present and go visit and have like a personal interaction with them. Like he's not the claims adjuster, but he could be there with the claims adjuster and have someone else be doing things that need to be done in the office. Those are all the premium things that people pay for. Not everyone's going to use my services, and, not everyone is going to, pay top dollar for, certain salespeople or, certain real estate agents. But, I'm not really going after quantity. I'm going after quality instead.
That's right. You know the people who are going to be your tribe, right?
Yeah.
And the niche is where the value is.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I'm interested, Melissa, in what is your why? Why do you do this? Why do you keep doing it? What gets you up in the morning and halfway around the world?
Yeah. So I knew since I was a little girl that I wanted to be an assistant. My mom was an assistant, and I always knew that that's what I wanted to be, because when we go to visit her in the office, people would just be like, oh, your mom's so great. Your mom knows everything. Like, your mom is keeping this, ship running. And I thought, I want people to say that about me when I grow up. And I always, my first job was actually as a waitress. But when I left my job as an executive assistant and started virtual assisting, I just felt like there was this gap. And I'm like, where are all these assistants coming from? Because the field is growing, but I don't think it's growing in quality numbers. And when I would start talking to people, when I was virtual assisting and had my own clients, I kept on finding people that would say, well, all that sounds really great, but where do you find such a person? And I thought, well, gosh, I know tons of people. Like, how do you? And so that's how it started. And that was the idea. Like the idea was always to promote this profession that I loved and then keep it top notch. So I like to match and make sure that it's the right people and the right assistants. And then when I wrote my first book, I wrote it for the client, but I had VAs and aspiring VAs reach out to me, and they wanted to know how to do it. So then there was this other side. So that's my next book is training them how to become the right VA. And it's if like you're in sales and you want to create the right type of salespeople, so people don't feel like used car salesman type of thing, right? Like you must be like, no, that's not us. And that's the same thing. I'm like, no, that's not the type of virtual assistant we are. Like,
right.
Not the type of admin we are. This is not Mad Men.
Is there a coffee is for closers line for virtual assistants? I don't think we have one. No,
that's probably a good thing.
Figure that one out. That's a good. It's the bane of our existence, in my opinion.
I have never heard that. I heard ABC always be closing, but I've never heard
coffee is for closers. Yeah.
Oh man.
Same movie. Yeah.
Yeah.
Same movie. Okay.
So, do you have a virtual assistant that can tell our audience to rate and subscribe to our podcast? Because we would like one of those, please. And that's really, really strong, Melissa. Thank you for being here today and kind of enlightening our audience to what you do and what you help other people to do. And your passion for what you do is very, very clear in the way you write, in the way you speak, in your presence online. You're really, really good at what you do. And I do not have to work with you to understand and appreciate that. So thank you for being our guest here today. What can people do to get a hold of you?
Well, they can go to my website. It's thepva.com. You can find me on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, or you can email me at melissa@thepva.com.
And that's THEP as in Paul, V as in Victor A. Perfect.
Yeah.
Excellent. Awesome. Melissa, thank you so much for joining us. And I am so jealous about your trip. This would be a dream of mine. So I may need to go back and take a look at my calendar and see how I can make that work for me too. So
absolutely. Well, thanks, Christy. It's my pleasure.
Fantastic. Christy, Melissa sounds like someone who knows her why.
That's right. Because when you know your why, your hows and your whats get much better.
Thanks for being here, everybody. We will talk to you again next week. Until then, give us a thumbs up, give us a star, rate us, give us a 5-star review because they take the same amount of effort as a 1-star review. And you know you love us because you keep coming back every week. And subscribe to us if you want to hear from us on a regular basis. You're going to want to subscribe. And I'm going to tease it again because we are coming to you a lot more often than once a week in the very near future. So you're going to want to know what's up.
Stuff. Yep, good stuff coming.
So thanks, everybody. We'll talk to you next week.
All right. See ya.
I told you once, I've told you twice. I told myself it doesn't matter.
How about the music on this podcast? We call them our house band. They call themselves Haskins, and they're based out of Plymouth, Michigan. If you want to hear more from them, go to haskinsmusic.com and check them out. Hey, thanks for listening to us on the Why in the Buy podcast. If you like us, tell us. Send us a message at the Why in the Buy on Twitter, or leave us a 5-star review on iTunes or wherever you got this podcast. We'd love to hear from you. Talk to you next week.
You're listening to the Podcast Detroit Network. Visit www.podcastdetroit.com for more information.